Hello and welcome to Military Mayday. We're pointing out a few pieces on the chessboard. Got a few stories for you today. A couple of them are wild. This one here is about good old Venezuela and Guyana. I think I did a couple articles or stories on them I read through. This one here is by The Sun. They're a well-established paper, and we're going to get into it. But first, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. I want to thank all the subscribers that I got, especially the new ones. Appreciate you. Anybody else out there, hey, help me out. I'm only going to try to get better and work a little bit more. Let's do it. Is a border dispute between Venezuela and Guyana about to become the world's next armed conflict? And boy, don't they need another something for Americans to really pay attention to. Venezuela's president, Maduro, and his allies are seeking a mandate from voters to annex nearly a third of Guyana's territory. Just taking it, baby. Taking it. Venezuelans are voting in a referendum Sunday to supposedly decide the future of a large swath of neighboring Guyana that their government claims ownership of, arguing the territory was stolen when a north-south border was drawn more than a century ago. Guyana considers the referendum a step toward annexation, and the vote has its residents on edge. I bet it does. It asked Venezuelans whether they support establishing a state in the disputed territory known as Essequibo, granting citizenship to current and future area residents, and rejecting the jurisdiction of United Nations top court and settling the disagreement between the two South American countries. Now, reading off what I read off, how much firepower Venezuela has compared to Guyana, personally, I would try to work out maybe some kind of a deal, maybe some payments, maybe if they would be so sweet, or I would just hand it over. Because if not, there are going to be a lot of people dead. They don't have the military to take on Venezuela. We are solving through constitutional, peaceful, and democratic means an imperial dispossession of 150 years, Maduro said after voting in a military complex in Caracas, the capital. The International Court of Justice on Friday ordered Venezuela not to take any action that would alter Guyana's control over Essequibo, but the judges did not specify especially ban officials from carrying out Sunday's 5-question referendum. Guyana had to ask the court to order Venezuela to halt parts of the vote. The legal and practical implications of the referendum remain unclear, but in comments explaining Friday's verdict, International Court President John Donohue said statements from Venezuela's government suggested it is taking steps to view toward acquiring control over the administering the territory in dispute. It's taking steps toward it. Okay. Furthermore, Venezuelan military officials announced that Venezuela is taking concrete measures to build an airstrip to serve as logistical support point for the integral development of the Essequibo. Yeah, I bet they're building a military or an airstrip, more like would be a giant base. The 62,000 square mile territory accounts for 2/3 of Guyana and also borders Brazil, whose defense ministry earlier this week in a statement said it has intensified its defense actions and boosts its military presence in the region as a result of the dispute. Essequibo is larger than Greece and rich in minerals. It also gives access to an area of the Atlantic where oil in commercial quantities was discovered in 2015, drawing the attention of Mr. Maduro's government. Well, Venezuela's got a lot of oil and shit too. Don't think it don't. Venezuela's government promoted the referendum for weeks, framing participation as an act of patriotism and often conflating it with a show of support for Maduro. His government held a mock referendum last month but did not release participation figures or results. Venezuela has always considered Essequibo as its own because the region was within its boundaries during the Spanish colonial period, and it has long disputed the borders decided by international arbitrators in 1899 when Guyana was still a British colony. That boundary was decided by arbitrators from Britain, Russia, and the United States. The United States represented Venezuela in the panel in part because the Venezuelan government had broken off diplomatic relations with Britain. Venezuela officials contend that Americans and Europeans conspired to cheat their country out of the land and argued that a 1966 agreement to resolve the dispute effectively nullified the original arbitration. Guyana, the only English-speaking country in South America, maintains the initial accord is legal and binding and asked the International Court of Justice in 2018 to rule it as such, but ruling this is years away. Voters on Sunday will have to answer whether they agree to reject by all means in accordance with the law and 1899 boundary and whether they support the 1966 agreement as the only valid legal instrument to reach a solution. Maduro and his allies are urging voters to answer yes to all 5 questions in the referendum. Well, I'm sure they are, and I would do the same because it looks like they're going to just take it if they don't anyway. And there's not much Guyana will be able to do about the military power, and I really don't know who's going to come to their aid, to be honest with you. I believe Venezuela is like one of the most powerful military countries there. I mean, America pretty much runs it and owns it. But all right, this one here. Russians who executed unarmed Ukrainian soldiers were killed. Now, it doesn't say who killed them or how. Was it Russia? Was it Ukraine? Very unspecific. The Ukrainska Pravda is kind of hit or miss with this. Russians who executed unarmed Ukrainian soldiers were killed. The Russian invaders who executed have been killed, said Vitaly Barabash, head of Advika City Military Administration. And just how were they killed and by who? Barbash on, okay. The 2 Ukrainian soldiers, surrendered because they ran out of ammunition. As far as I know, a little later, our guys stormed these positions, and all who were there were killed. On Saturday, the 2nd December, a video was posted online of Russian occupiers shooting some Ukrainian soldiers who had surrendered at a location believed to be near the settlement of Stepapov, near. The Ukrainian armed forces are checking the video. They're checking the video. The Office of the Prosecutor General of Ukraine declared that the investigation has been launched following the release of the video showing Russian invaders shooting Ukrainian soldiers who had surrendered. And that's it. It doesn't say anything about how they were killed, who killed them, nothing. I mean, that's why I had to put this story up, because it's just, I mean, there's nothing there. To me, this sounds like propaganda the whole way through. You want to know the absolute truth. And here's another story. This is from the Daily Mail. Now, the Daily Mail is a pretty good website. I mean, and anyway, Putin's troops are raping and torturing Ukrainian men as well as women. Horrors endured by male prisoners are revealed, and it's feared many more victims will be uncovered. Now, in warfare, I would have already told my men that you will take the moral high ground. Any kind of murder, raping, killing, stealing, all that shit, you will be executed. That is usually, especially if you're Russia, in the limelight that they're setting in. I mean, that would be the first thing you would think. Even the Russian soldiers would know this shit. So, I mean, but, again, it's on the Daily Mail, and it supposedly has witnesses and people that were there, but, I don't know. I'm going to read a little bit through because it's a long story, but I'm not going to do it all, just the first parts of it. Russian soldiers have raped and tortured men as well as women in Ukraine as weapon of war to destroy the population for generations to come, international activists and lawyers have revealed. International activists and lawyers. Some Ukrainian men who were detained by Russian soldiers in the Kherson region were raped with sticks, while others were tortured with electrical shocks to their genitals, experts say. The stigma surrounding wartime sexual violence in Ukraine's conservative society means it can particularly challenge for male rape victims to report what happened to them. Well, there are hundreds of cases of Ukrainian women being raped by Russian soldiers as part of patterns of systemic sexual violence since the full-scale invasion began. And, it's funny because I haven't really heard anything about women being raped in mass. And that's not so far, I don't remember. But activists who help survivors of wartime violence and torture say that they are a case of both men and women having been abused by Russian soldiers. That there are cases. Okay. It will only be when these areas are liberated by Ukrainians and Vladimir Putin's men are forced to retreat. The true scale of the horrors will be uncovered, international lawyers say. Okay, so they don't really know the true scale. I mean, I don't know. I just don't really trust this story. Now, down here, okay, here's this here. Karina, 22, told Mail Online how a Russian dragged her from her home and raped her in her neighbor's abandoned house. She had been 20 when right on March 8, within minutes of arrival, they had terrorized the families who lived there, invaded their homes, and stole from them. Karina, who worked as a medical worker at the hospital when the war broke out, recalls how on the third day, furious Russian soldiers had gone to house to seize their mobile phones and computers after the artillery from Ukraine began firing on their positions. Remembers how the Russians had forced their way into her home and shot at her boyfriend before they snatched their phones away from them. The village they blamed me and my boyfriend for giving away their position. They shot at my boyfriend with a gun and missed him by inches to scare him. Took me out of my home and blamed me. They accused me of transferring data about their location to our Ukrainian military. Recalling how one soldier began hauling her across the yard away from the other soldiers to her neighbor's abandoned home, not knowing what would happen to her. I remember seeing used condoms, blah, blah, blah. Then he raped me. After he was done, he said he would rape me again and that he would kill me if the shelling from Ukrainian military started again. Okay. There's the two Russian snipers. They're alleged to have accused of gang raping a mother at gunpoint in front of her husband or to face trial in Ukrainian court. Now, they're accused of it. So anyway, like I said, this is a super long article. I just can't, not the time to read through it all. I don't really want to. But like I said, I mean, war is war, right? But I mean, the high ground is more important than about anything. And tough one for me to really believe, but I mean, I'm sure that some stuff happens, but on mass, kind of like they're trying to say, I don't know. Anyway, if you like this info, subscribe, smash the like button. Toodaloo.